Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Dan Casper here with you, as always, for every episode of the podcast. Big thanks for tuning in. Tip of the cap to you all for tuning in to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. I got a little grind my gears coming at you. That's going to be coming up at the second half of this episode. Calling out all of you complaining about the NBA All-Star Game. Little Rays plays, who cut and didn't cut the mustard. Got a couple picks over there. That's also coming up in the second half of this episode. I want to lead off the episode talking some more Brewers baseball. Brandon Woodruff's coming back to Milwaukee. Going to hit that up also. Maybe a little bit. Could we please see the Brewers offense be a little bit more aggressive on the base pass? I'm going to explain something. I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail as well. But first up, Brandon Woodruff. Let's talk about Brandon Woodruff. The news yesterday, of course, dropping shortly after we got off the airwaves, and of course, that always works out, but nonetheless, we get to talk about it today. Brandon Woodruff, reportedly coming back to the crew. Brewers bringing him back on a 2-year deal. Now, we got to remember, too, we don't know the official details. One, the team hasn't made it official. I haven't seen any numbers out there yet. You know, speculation and that sort of stuff is rampant in 2024 and social media and such, but for what it's worth, haven't seen any official details or anything like that. However, when it comes to this move, I personally feel like a couple things are probably out there. One, again, let's assume unless he's making a remarkable recovery right now, Brandon Woodruff is not going to pitch this year. Well, I'm going with that assumption. So I think if anybody has the assumption that, you know, Brandon's going to pitch this year, he's going to be the ace, he's going to be part of the rotation, you know, maybe by the summer, after the All-Star break or anything like that, I think let's still maybe lower those expectations because this is a major shoulder injury for a Brewers or for a pitcher, okay? So let's lower those expectations a little bit. I've gone in with the mindset that we're not going to see Woody pitch at all this year. So I would assume the first year of this deal is probably pretty minimal in terms of money. Whether it's a minimum, I don't know. I don't know. But I would assume it's probably not a ton. Okay? I would assume it's not a lot. And my other assumption, again, I could be completely wrong in this, but this is just my general thoughts. I would assume that in that second year of this deal, there might be a lot of incentives. There might be a lot of benchmarks, escalators, as they like to say in some of these contract terms out there. You know, just for an example, maybe it's like, hey, Woody, you pitch 100 innings or 120 innings this year, you get $2 million escalator, $2 million bonus. You win 12 games, you get another $5 million, stuff like that. That would be my guess heading into the second year of this deal. But again, I could be completely wrong. I'm operating under the belief again that we're not going to see Brandon Woodruff pitch at the major league level this year. And part of that, I mean, there's a couple reasons for that. One, again, I mean, everything we've heard, everything we've been told, we've talked about it with Dr. Crow. This is a big time injury for a pitcher, and sometimes pitchers can't fully come back from an injury like this. And we don't know at this point in time, is Brandon Woodruff going to be the same Brandon Woodruff? Is he going to have to transition to a little bit of a different role? We don't know. It's a big unknown at this point in time. So we're kind of operating, you know, driving at the wheel or steering the steering wheel and not really knowing where we're going right now at this point because it's kind of a wait-and-see approach with Woodruff. mean, you hope he comes back, and you hope he still can be a really good starter in this league, but we don't know quite yet. All that being said, knowing that we're probably not going to see him this year, knowing that it's a tough injury to come back from, all that being said, I really like this move. I really like this move for a few different reasons for the Crew. One, by bringing him in for a couple of years. And again, shout out to our good buddy Brandon Berg, who you hear on Friday mornings, and he's our Brewer guy. And he threw out this possibility a couple weeks ago, saying, I'd like the Brewers to, I'm paraphrasing, I'd like the Brewers bring him back for a couple of years, for like a 2-year deal. And, knowing the first year, probably not going to see him, but get him in the system and such. And guy nailed it. But that's where one part where I like this is, in the main part, you bring him in, you're kind of bringing him in with the expectation, and probably know, okay, we're not going to force it, we're not going to push it. And that's the other thing, too. Remember, he had 2 shoulder injuries last year. And that's where I don't think the Brewers are going to really push it for this year. They're going to take their time. So remember, he missed a ton of time last year dealing with a shoulder injury. And then, right before the postseason starts, shoulder injury pops up again. Remember that? He was supposed to be the Game 2 starter, then all of a sudden he's done. So the fact that he had a couple of shoulder injuries last year, I think, is going to, have the Brewers be a little bit more cautious with this thing, be patient with it, not force the issue, and not try to get him back out there as soon as possible. But again, with all that being said, I like it because in that first year, you bring him in, you monitor his progression, you get him within your rehab process, you get him in that pitching lab that we always hear about with the Brewers. And that's the one thing, let's be honest, Brewers, one thing they've kind of done a pretty decent job at has been figuring out some pitchers or getting some pitchers back on track or doing a pretty solid job at developing some pitchers. So getting Brandon Woodruff back and getting him in that, quote, pitching lab and being able to monitor his progress and monitor his recovery, I think is incredibly beneficial for a team like the Crew. And I also think it's incredibly beneficial for a guy like Brandon Woodruff to hook up with a team, to work with their staff, to work with their athletic training staff, and not necessarily have to try to go out on your own and find your own docs and physical therapists and athletic trainers and such. Now you're together with the team and you're all on the same page with everything, working together to try to get back. So I think it's beneficial for the team, but also I think it's beneficial for Brandon Woodruff to be a part of that team and working collectively together to get back out on the field. And I feel like, again, without knowing the money details, and maybe there's a simple thing like it's a 2-year deal. And again, I'm just going to throw something out there. Maybe it's a team option for the second year. Maybe, after the first year of monitoring him and watching him rehab and all that, and if they don't like where it's going or they don't see any positive stuff, maybe they opt out. I don't know. I'm throwing out possible scenarios. But you bring a guy like that back too, who is widely respected in the clubhouse, widely respected within the organization for a lot of the moves that have been, let's face it, some poor PR ones in terms of fans. And the Corbin Burns one stunk. Sure, it took a little bit of a hit in the clubhouse. Definitely took a hit amongst fans and such. This is a nice one. And I know we're not in the business, and baseball's not in the business, and they're not in the business of making feel-good moves and we're just going to do this to make people happy. That's not the business they're in, and I don't want them to be in that type of business. But I do think it sends a positive message throughout the clubhouse. Gives a little fire, gives a little spark, like, all right, our guy's back. The guy we've gone to battle with, the guy that has pitched a ton for us, has been one of our better players over the years. We're bringing him back. We may not get him this year. He's hurt in that, but the team brought him back, and he's going to be around. I think that's a benefit for this ball club too. So I'm excited. Again, I wouldn't expect a whole lot of updates about him this year. Just let him do his thing. Let him recover. Let him rehab. Let him work at trying to get back. And maybe this is more of a topic of conversation heading into the next offseason or next spring training. And maybe we'll get another run with Brandon Woodruff at that time. But I like it. Thumbs up. Not expecting anything this year, but thumbs up. Bringing him back in the organization. Christian Yelich. After position players reporting and that, we finally got to see Christian Yelich taking a little BP. Talk to some of the members of the media yesterday in front of his locker and such. Couple of notes from Yelich in his media session yesterday. Did express some optimism about his team's chances heading into this year. Kind of noted that everybody's always picked against them and they've always kind of exceeded expectations and such. So also he talked about his role with the team. He said playing left field is ideally what I want to do. Some DHing is nice, but I definitely don't want to primarily DH. I still enjoy playing the outfield, and it's something I can do as much as possible. I'm sure I'll rotate through similar to last year whenever there is a good spot that makes sense. Pat Murphy also saying, I consider him our left fielder, but there is going to be ample times for him, Hoskins, and William Contreras to DH as well. I don't know what the number will be, but I want him in the lineup for 162 games minus whatever he needs. He also said he's looking forward to seeing Jackson. This is Christian Yelich again, back to Yelich. He's looking forward to seeing Jackson Chourio suit up this spring. He said he has not seen Chourio play in person, but he said, quote, Chourio is obviously really talented for the organization to make a commitment like that. Talking about his new deal. He's got a very bright future ahead of him, and we just have to let him play and let him be a kid and a rookie in the big leagues. Obviously, when you sign a contract like that, there are expectations and everything that comes along with that. But at the same time, you have to let him play because there will be growing pains in this league. He also went on to say, I'm one of the older guys on this team for sure, and I've been around the league for a little bit. So you try to help these guys navigate the first time or two through the league. It's difficult. You can prepare for the major leagues, but the first time you're in it is the first time you find out what it's all about. It's the best league in the world for a reason. Yelich also went on to say, some of the guys that we have had here and have moved on will be some of the best players that the franchise has ever seen. But before they were that, they were also these young kids that were super talented that people weren't as familiar with, that grew, learned at the big league level, and developed into these household names. These guys definitely have that potential. Talking about the Crew's younger makeup of this roster, I think, is probably the proper way to say that. So, got Yelly talking a little bit about the youngsters on his ball club. Seems to be a little excited. You could go on social media and such and see some of the video clips of it. The audio kind of gets a little bit hard because they're recorded on cell phones and such, but from some of the writers out there. But you can hear Yelich kind of talk a little bit about it. But he was one too that was definitely happy about the Brandon Woodruff news and coming back to the Brewers. So talking about projections too, since we were talking a little bit about Jackson Chourio over there, and again, that's another big unknown how he's going to turn out, what to expect from him this year and such. But if you are one that likes to kind of look at FanGraphs or maybe some predictions or some projections and such, and that's what MLB has been doing right now, and almost every league does it as they prepare to open up, their season and such. Get a little conversation going, some arguing. I don't want to say arguing points, but little debate points and that sort of stuff. But one of the latest ones out there from MLB.com in terms of predicting and projections, stolen bases. Stolen bases. And this is something I think, starting from last year and even going into this year, Brewers fans would like to see the players be a little bit more aggressive on the base paths and maybe steal some more bases, really utilize the speed of their younger players, and even throw in a Yelich over there. Really trying to be aggressive on those base paths, stealing more than maybe we've seen in the years prior. You've got the banning of the shift, and taking advantage of that, utilizing the speed with their young guys of Sal Frelick and Garrett Mitchell and Joey Weimer, maybe even Jackson Chourio. So Brewers fans have wanted to see that. They've been talking about it. Well, you're not the only ones that are kind of talking about that. MLB.com, then their latest predictions, predicting this year's stolen base leader. Now, they've got their top 5. And I'll tell you right now, no Brewer player is in the top 5, okay? However, they've got their next 5 of dark horse candidates. And the first 2 are Milwaukee Brewers players. Number 1, Jackson Chourio. As they note, one of the fastest players on Major League Baseball's Pipeline's list of baseball's top 100 prospects, Chourio has a good chance to make his big league debut on opening day this year after signing an 8-year, $82 million contract. And that means Chourio, who turns 20 in March, will have ample opportunities to show off his wheels in the majors after swiping 44 bases over 128 games in the minors a year ago. So their number 1 dark horse candidate, Jackson Chourio. So who's number 2? Bryce Turang. Bryce Turang. Turang's 218, 285, 300 line in 448 plate appearances as a rookie last year is both a worrying sign and an encouraging one when it comes to his 2024 outlook for steals. On one hand, if that level of production continues, Turang probably will lose playing time and not get the chance to pile up steals. On the other hand, going 26 for 30 despite a sub-600 OPS suggests that even a modest improvement at the plate could have Bryce Turang in his 96th percentile sprint speed running wild. The 24-year-old was a first-round draft pick and a touted prospect who owns a .365 on-base percentage in extensive time at AAA. So such a step forward is not out of the question. Speed. As Mickey and Rocky 2 would tell Sylvester Stallone or tell Rocky Balboa, when he's chasing a chicken, getting ready to chase a chicken, got to get speed. Speed is what we need. Greasy, fast speed, right? Brewers have speed. Are they going to use it? Are they going to take advantage? We talk about speed in the defense and covering a lot of ground in that outfield, covering out some ground in the infield. Are they going to use that speed now on the offensive side of things? They've brought in Rhys Hoskins. They've brought in a bat. Assuming that they're still going to bring in Gary Sanchez and such. We'll see. But maybe trying to solidify that lineup with a little bit more power. Are they now going to utilize that speed and be aggressive on the base pass? You got an older manager making his, he's been an interim manager at the major league level with the Padres for a hot minute, long-time college coach, long-time bench coach. But a little bit more of he is an older manager. Is he going to bring maybe a little bit more of an old school mentality and going to be aggressive on the base paths? I hope so. You got all that young speed out there. I really hope that we see this team, and knowing how young they are and a little inexperienced, maybe the way to manufacture some more runs, to be aggressive. And I think the part 2 here is you bring in a guy like Rhys Hoskins, assuming that he's going to be able to provide the pop and the power over there. You get one of those table setters on, you get one of those speed guys out there, puts a little bit more pressure on that pitcher, knowing that you've got a guy with a decent bat up at the plate there too. So I hope we see this Brewers team be uber aggressive and stealing some bases this year. Take advantage of that speed. Let's take a quick break, and coming up next, who cut and didn't cut the mustard. And I'm grinding my gears about everybody complaining about the NBA All-Star Game. That's coming up after these quick words. We are always looking to save a little money in our pockets, but we still need our essentials like our grocery items. So how do you save money while also getting what you need for your family? Hy-Vee Perks. If you shop at Hy-Vee, you're already getting a great deal on quality items throughout the store. But now you can save more money with Hy-Vee Perks on different items each week. Saving some money is easy if you shop at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. So take advantage of these awesome deals and sales and stop on over at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire today. Are you thinking of taking a spring break trip this year? Or maybe you're already eyeing up that summer vacation, but you're not quite sure if you have the proper transportation for those road trips. Hey, that's where Toyson Ford can help you. Toyson Ford has a wide selection of new and used vehicles for you to check out. And at Toyson Ford, they treat you like an honored guest. They will work with you on financing no matter what your budget may be. So if you're looking for that new vehicle this year, head to Toyson Ford, located at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard in Chippewa Falls. Who cut and didn't cut the mustard? Presented by Ray's Place for this morning. A reminder, you can all play along too. Who cut and didn't cut the mustard? Hit us up with your text for your picks. Mine, I'll start off with who did cut the mustard, and I had to switch it. I had it picked yesterday, but I had to switch it because of what the Minnesota Wild did yesterday. So we had some day hockey, right, because of President's Day yesterday. Going up against Vancouver. Vancouver, one of the better teams in the league. Minnesota beating them 10-7, scoring 7 goals in the third period. However, Minnesota's scored 6 times in a span of 5 minutes and 45 seconds, which was the fastest such flurry in the NHL in 25 years since Washington had 6 goals in 4 minutes, 47 seconds in a game in February in 1999. So, who cut the mustard? The Minnesota Wild cut that mustard yesterday. So, kudos to them over there. Who didn't cut the mustard? I'm going with Rick Pitino. Now, Rick Pitino, a couple days ago, after a loss to Seton Hall, Rick Pitino kind of venting a little bit. He went on a little bit of a tirade in his post-game availability. He criticized everything from his team's facilities to his players, and declaring that his first season with St. John's was, quote, the most unenjoyable experience of my lifetime. Also went on to say, quote, do we have, I got to clear out some of these words, crappy facilities? Yes, we do. Having crappy facilities has nothing to do with not guarding. He called out players by name, saying, look, Joel Soriano's slow laterally. He's not fast on the court. Chris Ludlam is slow laterally. Sean Conway's slow laterally. Brady, physically weak. Drissa, slow laterally. Went on to say, too, quote, lost this season the way we recruited. The players don't align with how he coaches. It's a good group. They try hard, but they're just not very tough. He followed it up yesterday. Didn't he stand by his critiques? So, maybe a little bit of time to kind of cool down and all that. Nope. He went on speaking to Newsday yesterday that he, quote, truly wasn't ripping anybody, saying, I was pointing out exactly in a monotone voice why we lost. I'm not always calm, and certainly not when I rip someone. I was not ripping anybody. I sometimes want my players to hear my words and read my words. That was my intention. I was asked the question, why do you blow second half leads? And I can tell you sometimes it's missed free throws at the end of the game, and opponents make free throws. Sometimes it's a turnover. Sometimes it's a bad shot selection that also leads to runouts. It's not the same reason every time, but it's the same reason every time of why you foul. You foul because you take a bad shot, you get caught in a bad situation defensively, and you're not overly quick laterally. So, when you go to defend the basket, rather than beat them to the spot, you foul. That's what I was trying to point out. I'm fine with what I said. You shouldn't be, Rick. You shouldn't be. It's not saying I agree with it, not saying, I'm in favor of it, but times have changed in college sports. Little thing called transfer portal and NILs and all that sort of stuff, but kind of have to manage players a little bit differently, kind of have to manage personalities a little bit differently. So, again, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I'm against tough love and all that, but given how today's college world is, and kind of going out there and with some of the comments that you said calling out with those players are going to remember that. Potentially future players are going to remember that too. Again, not saying whether I agree with that mindset or not, but I think it's kind of evident in a lot of cases right now, maybe the old school mentality doesn't always work. And just kind of going out there and criticizing facilities and players. I mean, you were the one who recruited these players. Dude, you were the one. You were the one that took this job. If you didn't like the facilities, you were the one who took this job. You were the one who recruited a lot of these players. Lost this season the way we recruited is the phrase you said. You got nobody else to blame but yourself, coach. Nobody else to blame. It is time for a little grind my gears. It is a grind my gears day. So, yesterday, from a national perspective, a lot of people complaining about the NBA All-Star game, how it was played. A lot of offense. All offense, no defense. Right? Over 200 points by the Eastern Conference. Damian, 39 points, 33 of those coming from three, and sometimes 40, 45, 50-footers it seemed like at times. But a lot of people complaining about this game, the All-Star game, how it's not competitive, and all that good stuff. To that I say, what do you expect? Like, what do you expect? The complaining that is coming out there, to me is just kind of a little mind-boggling, because what do you expect? I'll start off by saying this. That game was garbage. It doesn't entertain me. I didn't find it entertaining. I didn't like the game at all. I had to tune it out after a while. We watched the first quarter with Hutsy. He loved it. After that, I couldn't watch him. It's not my style of basketball. I don't like it. But here's the thing. I'm also 37, going to be 38 coming up here soon. That game ain't for me. That game's for the younger fans. It's for kids like my kid and, other. They love it. They love the offense. And you know what? It's the kids that kind of move the needle, move the money, because, it's like all of a sudden, hey, Tyrese Halliburton over there. Who's that guy? Oh, he scored a lot. I want his jersey now. I want his cards. Mom, Dad, that's on my Christmas list. What does Mom and Dad do? Oh, you got a new fan, Tyrese Halliburton. You move merchandise that way with the kiddos. And let's face it, this is the style of the NBA now. I saw a lot of clips, social media clips out there, like, oh, the good old days of the NBA All-Star Game was the 90s. It had like Jordan, Shaq, Grant Hill, Penny, Olajuwon. They were playing defense. It was a real game. That was the style then, and I loved that style. That's my favorite era, the 90s NBA. Loved it. I wish it would get back to that. It ain't. It's not. It is now 30, 35-foot jumpers. Your centers are shooting three-pointers from deep. You have to now. If you're a 7'2", 7'1" center, not many centers can make a living anymore by just sitting down in the post and on the block. You got to have an outside game. And here's the thing. The NBA has embraced that. They've embraced the Steph Currys. They've embraced the Damian Lillards. They've embraced the 35-foot jump shots from way beyond the arc. They've embraced that. You can't go back from that now. It's offense. I mean, I wish these All-Star games, Pro Bowl, NBA All-Star game, I wish it would go back to what it was, but it's not. And if you're not going to accept that, if you're not going to realize that, then you're going to complain every single year. I'm sure Adam Silver would love it to be a little bit more competitive. But here's the other thing, too. It's a phrase that a lot of fans don't like, but it's a reality with these teams. Load management. The NBA is trying to get away from load management. They've implemented this 65-game thing here if you want to do, or if you want to win awards in that. But another way to maybe not put a lot of effort in and kind of save some of your body, they ain't going to put a whole lot of effort into all-star games, these players. And I guarantee you, their franchises, their teams don't want their players to play hard in a meaningless game. And that's the only thing. Like, these all-star games, they're meaningless. Who cares with the effort level? It's not for me, but I don't really care about it. But these players aren't going to play hard. You got a little thing out there that's load management now. Teams don't want them playing hard. These players aren't going to play hard for a game that doesn't matter to them anymore. And back then, all-star games, like when I was a kid in the 90s, I loved them. I loved the Pro Bowl. I loved the NBA All-Star Game. I loved it all. Why? Because a lot of the times, that was my only time that I could see some of these other players play. It was the only time that I could see, unless it was a postseason game. But it was the first time, or maybe one of the few times, that I could see some of these other players in action. It's 2024. We're in a world of streaming. We're in a world of social media, the internet now. Now you can see your favorite players, or you can see some certain players all the time if you wanted to. And back then, you didn't have super teams. You didn't have all-stars or superstars pairing up on teams. And this was kind of the first time when it would be an all-star game. It's like, all right, we got Shaq and Jordan and Penny on the same team. It wasn't a thing. Now it's like, hey, some of these teams are already all-star teams because they've got their, 2 superstars, 3 all-stars, whatever it may be. It's a thing now. But we see these players all the time, whereas back in 90s or the 80s and such, you didn't see them often, and really you didn't see superstars on the same team like you do in today's game. So it kind of loses a little bit of shine with that way. So everybody, adults kind of upset about and just going bananas about the All-Star game and saying it's garbage and they got to change it up and they got to change something on there. My question would be, what did you expect? This is the style of the NBA. I don't like it, but it is what it is right now, and I'm not going to get all hung up and annoyed and frustrated because of the style. It is what it is right now. The NBA, I mean, that's just, when you look at golf, and Tiger came on the scene and just started dominating and changed the game. You had golf courses trying to Tiger-proof courses or make them longer and all that. And baseball, they've altered some rules here. Football, they've altered some rules to, try to even it out. Basketball really hasn't done anything. It wasn't that long ago. There was a conversation out there, hey, should they have a 4-point shot? Well, crying out loud, maybe some of these 3-pointers now should be 2-pointers and they should extend the 3-point line. Wasn't that long ago? There's like, hey, should there be certain spots in the court where it's 4 points, 5 points? The range for some of these guys now, that's nothing. And they've let it go so far. You can't go backwards. You can't. The game now is transition. It's high scoring. It's shooting early in the shot clock. It's having an outside game. Once in a while, you still see a little in and out, inside out. But those 80s and 90s days are gone right now. The NBA's embraced it. Can't go back from it. Everybody wants to shoot the rock from the logo now. It is what it is at this point. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about it. And I think a lot of people, adults, who get a little bent out of shape from it, again, I'll ask, what did you expect? I can't remember who it was, but somebody a few years ago told me, because I was one of those that I was just like, oh, Pro Bowl's garbage. Like, what are we still doing? They got to do something different. I was one of those, and then somebody just casually said, Pro Bowl is mostly for the kids, for younger fans. And I'm like, and it maybe didn't dawn on me until my kid got a little bit older and kind of realized it and started to pay attention a little bit more to sports. And, you love the Pro Bowl. Thought it was the coolest thing. Loved the All-Star game, the first quarter that he got to watch. Loved all the shooting. Loved the long-distance three-point shooting. I didn't. But you know what? The kids did. The younger generation did. The younger fans do. And that's really what it's kind of all about. All right, enough with the complaining. That is it for this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. Again, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And as a reminder, I know I always end it this way, but if you could take a few seconds just to give us a 5-star rating on like Spotify and Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you have the ability, like on Apple, to give us a positive review so others can find the podcast, that would be fantastic. We would really appreciate that. And a big thanks to all of you. Been seeing an increase in listens and downloads and reviews and such. So big thank you for that. Keep spreading the word of the Man Cave Podcast. All right, until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.